Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District for the December 3rd, 2020 at 10:03. Can we get a roll call there, Arlene, please?
Yes. David Potter.
Here.
Tyler Williamson.
Here.
Bill Peak.
Bill's there.
Bill Peak.
Yeah, here.
Thank you. Thank you. Ian Oglesby.
Here.
Mary Adams. Mary Adams.
Here.
Thank you, Mary. Marianne Leffel. Marianne Carbone. And Patricia Lintel. You have 5 present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Arlene. Okay, next item is public comment. The public may comment on any item within the district jurisdiction. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes in length. Public comment is open.
Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the action item. One action item is to consider adoption of the August 4th, 2020 committee meeting minutes. Anyone in the public want to speak on those? Or if not, we'll take a motion.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, a move approval by Mayor Potter and second by Supervisor Adams. Mayor Peak, you have your hand up, sir. You on mute. You on mute, Mayor.
This is the second time I've had to unmute. I don't know why it is muting me. In any case, I'd like the minutes to show that Pacific Grove objects to the allocation because it's not sufficient water to meet our RENA goals. I'd like that in the minutes.
Okay. Heidi, can we put those in the minutes?
The action item is really to just accept the minutes of the meeting and whether or not it's an accurate depiction of what happened at the last meeting.
Okay.
Then I'll vote against it because the one sentence that starts with the word concern does not adequately convey the message that I heard from Carmel, Monterey, and myself.
Okay, I understand that. We got San City Mayor Cabone on. Okay. Roll call vote. Arlene, please.
All right. Tyler Williamson.
Yes.
Ian Oglesby.
Mayor Oglesby, you just went on mute.
Aye for the minutes.
Thank you. Mary Adams.
Aye.
David Potter.
Aye.
Bill Peak.
No.
And Marianne Carbone.
Aye.
Minutes approved, 5-1.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to get into discussion items. General Manager. Dave, you on mute.
I'm off mute. Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, this item is the recent reduction in diversion limits instituted by the State Water Resources Control Board. This won't be a long meeting, but we do want to make sure that all of the cities are aware. You should have received a letter independently from the State Water Resources Control Board. Can the PAC members confirm that they have seen the letter through their own channels? Maybe just a thumbs up if so the State Water Board did send the letter to each jurisdiction within the cities, within the peninsula. In effect, it recognizes that the milestone was missed September 30th, and that the new effective diversion limit for withdrawals from the river becomes 7,310 acre feet, a reduction of 1,000 acre feet. Again, I was kind of looking out there to see if this comes as a surprise, or did all the cities receive notification? So I'm seeing a thumbs up. So let me tell you a little bit about what this means. The district will be sending a letter to the state, in effect asserting that it was not the cause of any one of the applicants, and the applicants for the cease and desist order include the California American Water, the Mayor's Authority, which has since gone inactive, so it doesn't currently have a voice, but I want to come back to that in a second, the Water Management District, and the City of Pacific Grove and the Pebble Beach Company. The Mayor's Authority and the district were included as applicants because we represent a broader cross-section of the community from the community policy side. We do not believe, even though California American has asserted in a October 21st letter that the district was the cause of the missed milestone, we believe that there's a case that can be made that none of the applicants directly caused the missing of the milestone, that it was in fact due to Coastal Commission scheduling, then shelter in place and COVID, and the Permit Streamlining Act, which just extended the amount of time it would have taken to issue a coastal development permit. So nevertheless, we are going to send a letter contesting the reduction and pointing out that the State Water Board needs to listen to all applicants, especially the applicants who represent the community, that it's not just a one-off, one-on against the company, California American. But I do want to talk about the practical impacts of the reduction. And Arlene, if you would put the single slide up on the window.
Yes, I will. Oh, and I just want to mention that Marianne Leffel has joined the meeting and has been entered as a panelist.
So this is a summary of what it would take to, what I say, get off the river, but generally speaking, to not violate the cease and desist order. And and the conclusion is going to be that the 1,000 acre foot reduction is really not going to hurt the community. And so the takeaway message is going to be that we're not going to institute rationing this year. There will not be any direct impact to businesses and residents. What this chart shows is the legal supplies that are available. So if California American were to get down to their legal limit of 3,376 acre feet, and their current availability from the Seaside Basin of the 1,474, an assumption that ASR is working on a steady basis at 1,300 acre feet, Sand City decel, this is the amount the state in effect partitioned from the Sand City decel to offset the withdrawals from the river. But Sand City decel has actually been doing quite a bit more than 94 acre feet per year. And then Pure Water Monterey, when the additional deep wells are online by the end of next year, will absolutely be producing 3,500 acre feet. So the total supply that you see there is the 9,744, and the 5-year average customer demand has been 9,825, which shows that we're basically break even or 81 acre feet short. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Sand City Desal has been producing closer to about 160 to 180 acre feet per year. So the difference is already made up right there. But also in normal years to wet years, there are additional water rights called Table 13 water rights that have been producing water in each of the last 3 years. That's not really shown here as a right. And there's also Seaside Basin carryover credits. So all told, these other little pockets of water, which I'll say are interruptible, your concern would be in a series of very dry years that not all of those little pockets of water would be available. But they have been recently in recent years, averaging about 900 acre feet per year. And we also start in October with just under 1,200 acre feet of aquifer storage and recovery in reserve and storage. So it's abundantly clear that the reduction in the effective diversion limit not only will have no impact, practical impact, it's more of a philosophical impact that the community shouldn't be harmed because a company couldn't get its facility permitted. But nevertheless, I want to assure the jurisdictions that you will not be seeing any calls for rationing or penalty rates. We do have a program that we're always in a water waste orientation. That's phase 1. Phase 2 would be additional enforcement of water waste. Phase 3 is penalty rates, and there's 2 steps in penalty rates. One is a 25% increase in everybody's rate, and if that doesn't achieve reductions, then a 40% increase in everyone's rate. And then the 4th step is rationing. And businesses that are best practice compliant would not be rationed. The burden would fall mostly to residential until such time that the residential is not showing enough impact. Those would be the steps it would take, but none of those steps are going to be needed this year. It's very likely that we'll miss a milestone again next year, but the CDO itself reaches a termination date at the end of next year. So we would miss a milestone October 1st of 2021, but then technically speaking, the company has to be down to that 3,376 acre feet from the river by December 31st anyway. So that's really the one that we'll be watching carefully. What these numbers show you is we're just about at break even right now. I did not include the most recent water year that finished in September of this year in that average because it was actually about 150 acre feet lower than the previous year. But we think embedded in there are the effects of shelter in place and COVID. And so we didn't want to further reduce the 5-year average by including this somewhat aberrational COVID year. But it does show that, in fact, that 5-year average that I'm using is probably a little higher than current. So with that, I just wanted to see if there's any questions from the jurisdictions, any concerns, or any follow-up.
Okay, Supervisor.
Thanks. Yeah, so, thank you. Dave, when is the effective date?
It's effective, basically retroactive to October 1st.
The water.
One of the things I should also tell you is because we've seen this systemic reduction in our consumer demand, we have accumulated what's called carryover credit for achieving pumping off the river that's below the effective diversion limit. And so even if we were close and not quite successful at meeting the diversion limit, we can take 750 acre feet of that accumulated credit and apply it to the limit in any year. So even if we were worried that we were going to be close this year, we've got a 750 acre foot bonus sitting there in the bank, if you will.
So second question, could you just tell me then, if this year, which is purported to be a dry year, if we go over the amount that we have been allotted, number one, where does the water come from? And number two, what will be the output?
Right. Well, the company has said that if it becomes a problem, they'll probably pump harder on the Seaside Basin rather than violate the limit on the river.
Yeah.
But if they violated the limit on the river, there are fines and penalties that could be incurred that would be passed through to the ratepayer.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Adams. Mary Ann, Airport District. I see you have your hand up. Okay, let's go to Mayor Peak out of PG. Go ahead, sir.
I have two questions for Mr. Stahl. First of all, will the district be putting out a statement that summarizes what you just told us, that for the next year, there'll be no impact on water users in the water management district? That's my first question. And my second question is, in regards to pumping, as you said, pumping harder from the Seaside Basin, isn't that basin adjudicated or managed, and aren't there limits to the amount of water that can be pumped from the basin?
Yeah, there are. And so it's, a little bit of what we call it, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So the key for us, for the community, is not being so close to either limit so that they can stay within their pumping limits on the Seaside Basin and on the Carmel River, which is where we think we are. It's pretty evident that's where we are. But the penalty for over pumping the allocation on the Seaside Basin is less than the potential penalty of violating the state board order on the river. So if it was super close, that's the one you would choose to violate. And then you can make it up later, replenishment assessments and so forth.
So how about my first question?
Oh, yeah, as far as the statement goes, yeah, I look to my chair, Alvin, we can certainly do that, just a release based on the state letter. I know that the Herald's already carried an article and the Pinecone's carried an article, but yeah, I think a public statement summarizing what we just talked about is probably a good one.
So what I heard from you was that there would be no impact on water users, ratepayers for the next year. So is that correct?
Correct. And so we are not going to take any action to affect customer demand to try to stay within the limits, because we don't believe we're going to exceed the limits, even with the reduction in the EDL.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Councilmember
Chair.
Go ahead, Arlene.
Yes, I do have a caller, and I want to just check to see if that caller could be Patricia Lintel. Just a moment, please.
Okay.
And then Tyler had his hand up.
Hello, caller. Would you mind identifying yourself? I'm just checking to see if you may be one of our PAC members. All right, I will go ahead and mute that caller. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on the dialogue and the comments made by Mayor Peak in that, so it looks like we're good for next year. What is the next step in regards to potential impacts to the ratepayers in out years? In other words, are we waiting until this time next year to determine if there's going to be impacts to our rates because of not meeting the requirements for the following year?
Right. Yeah. So, and we don't think the following, call it a year, is going to be the issue. The real issue comes to the end of the calendar year of 2021. And as I showed in that chart, it looks like mathematically we're very on the edge, but still on the safe side of the limits. However, my discussion with the State Water Board, if we want to extend the CDO, and one of the reasons to do that would be then we would still have access to the carryover credits that we've accumulated, which is frankly a little over 5,000 acre feet. So, it's 750 acre feet of help a year. That could be significant. So, but I've been told by the State Water Board that if we want to extend the CDO, we need to file a separate application to do so. So this action by the state was in response to a June joint report that was filed that said, hey, it's looking likely we're going to miss the CDO. And then the district sent a letter in July that said it's apparent that we're going to miss the milestone. But we don't think that it's the fault of any of the applicants, and therefore we do not believe you should take the 1,000 acre foot penalty. And then Cal-Am met with the state folks a couple months ago. And so the accumulation of that communication resulted in the effective diversion limit, but to extend the CDO with terms that might be helpful to the community, we'll take a separate application. So what actually will happen then at the end of 2021 is the CDO will exist in the form that it is currently in, which requires the company to be below that 3,376 from December 31st or January 1st of 2022 going forward. We haven't come up with a plan for what should be done about that. So, I think what I heard, council member, in your question is, are we doing something to be proactive rather than reactive? And the answer is not sure yet. I mean, we're thinking about it, but I think that we need to know a little better about the coastal development permit and which path the community is going down, if it's desal or not. Because I do think once you begin construction on a project and there's a known end date, that changes your conversation with the state as well. So as we get closer to mid-year and we kind of look back and see if consumer demand is staying relatively stable, then we'll recalibrate.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Oglesby, I see you have your hand up. You have any comments?
I think I have a quick question. I think Dave just said something about if Cal-Am is forced to overpump and the choices between the river and the basin, they would choose probably the basin because the penalties and the cost of overpumping the river. And I want to know who makes that final determination of which one they're authorized to overpump from.
Yeah, well, and it goes to the question authorized, right? But it'll be the company's decision on their own, and really there's no framework for directing them to make that decision. Just as I stare at the numbers, I'm still convinced that apart from any hydraulic, meaning plumbing issues, that there will be sufficient water in the system so that they won't have to overpump. But there are issues about, can you move any molecule of water from any place in the system to any other place in the system? And that's not entirely clear at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Sand City Mayor, Mary Ann Cabone. Do you have any?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was going to follow up with the same question that Mayor Oglesby had, and that was the sensitivity of choice, whether you were to pump from the seaside basin or from the Carmel River, how with the sensitivity that we're hearing. We just heard a report through Montgomery and Associates yesterday that FO9 and FO10 well is showing some sensitivities to seawater intrusion. So, and we're asked to pay very close attention to this. So the health of the seaside basin is very important to us, and everything stems off of that. So my question was that another question was the calculations with the interrupted water production, and that they don't consider the effect of drought on the water produced, so rain and drought. So we're looking at 1 year. Is there a further, can we look further out at these, what would happen with these calculations?
Right. Yeah, so to the first question, I agree with you. I think the Montgomery presentation yesterday changes the outlook because of the potential for seawater intrusion. Which again is why, on the one hand, we need the numbers to work so that they don't have to overpump anywhere. But B, you're right in that the numbers that I've shown you, even though they're based on available supply in normal years, drought is the enemy of all those little other pockets of water. So at the end of the day, we need a new water supply, permanent substitute water supply. And we know that. The question is, with this, what is it now? Almost 13-month window to the end date of the CDO's effective diversion limit, what happens if we get there? And we could be in water purgatory for a while, because if the desal plant gets approved, it's still a 30-month period. If the desal plant doesn't get approved, even Pure Water Monterey expansion is probably 24 months. So there is a period of time before you have water supply online that makes all this go away. Yet the company still needs to be at that 3376. And so it's really that period, that 3-year period, where things get a little dicey, I would say. But I think if we're building water supply, if there's an actual project going in, but we're now in a drought and there's no table 13 rights, or Sand City desal well goes down, or what have you, if we're right up against the effective diversion limit, and we don't have the benefit of carryover credit from the CDO because we're past December 31st, that is the problem. So I think, Mayor, you're right for pointing it out, but I don't think we're looking at a long-term issue. We're trying to just figure out how to bridge the gap between now and a new water supply being online, which, again, could be 3 years.
Thank you.
Mayor Potter, do you have any comments?
I'd just like to add my support to Bill's recommendation, or hint that we should get this message out as soon as possible, in some sort of effective medium too, so that we can let the community know the status of the recent decision. I think it's important that we get it out there in a forum where the public actually understands that if the coming year is not as dire as some people are alleging it's going to be.
Airport District, Marianne Leffler, you have any comments? Okay, before I open up to the public, Mayor Peak, do you have any more? I see your hand still up.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Yes, I just had one follow-up question for Mr. Stoll. Does CalAm agree with your projection that for the next year, there'll be no impact on ratepayers?
Yeah, they haven't characterized it quite that way, but in a letter that they sent, they in effect said we can live with the 7310 effective diversion limit, and that they believe that there's sufficient supply. So that they've stated it.
Thank you.
Okay, before open up to the public, Arlene, give them 3 minutes.
Chair Edwards, I see no raised hands.
Thank you. Okay, my final comments on this item is the district is going to try to stay ahead of this. We sent a letter out earlier in the year talking about what could happen that we're going to miss milestones. We got a letter back. I'm going to ask the general manager to send that letter out again to the cities that the state sent us, because on December 14th, we're going to try to answer some of those questions. And I don't think we have 1,000 acre feet to give up, even though we have it. I don't think so. I look outside right now, I don't see no rain clouds. So we get in that punch now and start fighting ahead of this. I'm trying to stay ahead of it, and I hope the mayors support the district on this. So December 14th at our meeting, the board will be considering a letter to the State Water Board on this issue. Thank you. General Manager, what's the next item?
The last item is just an update on the water for near-term housing needs. Darlene, if you'd put the chart up. I just wanted to let you all know that we have had some discussion with folks in the state. I can tell you the one that we did last week and a half ago, might have been a week and a half ago, was a meeting with one of the primary consultants on the Senate Housing Committee, as well as a legislative consultant to Nancy Skinner, the author of SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. That meeting didn't go especially well because what the two things that we were asking for was, from their knowledge, who's the most approachable at the state Housing and Community Development Department. And second of all, to try to get Senator Skinner on as a supporter for any letter that we submit to the state. And I won't say it went poorly. We got some very good information, but one of our jurisdictional participants was a little impatient and was asking for a little bit more action than was intended to be accomplished in that call. Since that time, through the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, I have gotten a contact at the Housing and Community Development Department at the state, who I've reached out to. But I think we've changed. We had a call on this yesterday with our Sacramento lobbyists, and I think we've changed our approach. We've been asked by the attorney from the State Water Board, Steve Westhoff, basically asked, when are you going to make an application for this piece? And that was originally slated, as you can see in this timeline, for late August. And here we are in December. So what we talked about yesterday with our group is that we will go ahead and prepare a draft formal application for relief from Condition 2 of the CDO in a limited fashion, up to 75 acre-feet of water for an increase in use due to a change in zoning or use, but not in excess of the effective diversion limit. So again, the math is, if we can stay within our means as a whole, but at the same time on an existing site, increase use on that site for housing, for affordable housing, then let us go ahead and do that. So it would be relief under Condition 2, which prohibits an increase in use at a site, not petitioning for relief from the overall effective diversion limit. And I think that makes it more palatable. So anyway, we're going to prepare that draft. We're going to prepare a draft letter of support for co-signing by our new Senator Laird and Mark Stone and any other legislative folks who want to sign on to a letter of support. And we will set up the timing for our submission, and then we'll also go to the other NGOs who've offered to help. And here it's United Way, Land Watch, drawing a blank, Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and just time those letters of support to be simultaneous with our actual submittal of the application. And so that's the approach we're on right now. I think what it means is we're more likely into the beginning of next year before we get there. It's been a real challenge because COVID distracted the entire legislature all the way up until their recess. And, you know, they only come back in to swear in the new members and they go back on recess. So this period of time has been very slow in getting meetings and getting attention of folks and so forth. But we're progressing. We do have a plan. We are going to make the ask, and we'll just update you in early next year.
Any questions for the general manager on that item?
So, Mr. Chair, if I might.
Go ahead, Mayor Potter.
So, Dave, I was noticing that the Monterey Ledge Committee, the Management's Ledge Committee meets on the 17th of December. Is that timely enough, or do you want to meet prior to that?
Yeah, so we're going to have to move that at the request of, really at the request of JEA, but kind of confirmed by our federal folks too, that they'd prefer to shift that to late January, early February when the session's back in and bills are starting to be developed.
Okay, good. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Great.
No other questions? Okay, Arlene.
So I do just.
Okay. Mayor, Councilmember Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, so the plan is to submit this sometime this month, and then we're hoping to get a response from the State Water Board in January?
Yeah. And the problem is that this is going to probably fall into a board action rather than a staff action. So that means it could get hung up in the 2 to 3 month waiting period to get on a board agenda, and you know, it will also depend on whether there's a glimmer of support through the staff at the State Water Board, because if they're not even seeing the health and safety need, then it might never get there. But that's why we're trying to, you know, as I said, that's why we're trying to enlist support of other housing advocates, because it's not really it is a water issue, but it's a constraint to a housing issue is what it is. And so.
So I'm just wondering through maybe the chair or staff that if there was some way that this could get prioritized so that if it did come back, we didn't have to wait this 2 to 3 month period. in an effort to do everything that we can to allow these projects to move forward, or our cities to move forward with the planning, knowing that this would be a possibility if the decision is that the water board allows that to move forward. And my last question, Dave, is I'm wondering if there's a draft prepared that can be shared in order to help draft a letter of support and send that to you for various individuals and organizations that I might be able to help recruit for support.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So our plan is to, and hopefully by next week, have a draft of our letter that will go to the state, have a draft of a letter of support for our letter, and then a list of the entities for which we will be asking for their support. So you'll kind of know who everyone else is that might be stepping in.
Beautiful, thank you. And I'll just kind of throw one other additional thing out. It might be a good place to start with the legislatures on those that are really focused on housing, right? If we can tie that message to our advocacy to them, it might be an easy sell, a starting place to sell them on that.
Yeah, that's why our meeting a week and a half ago didn't go as well as planned, because Skinner's legislative aid is very helpful, but very non-committal about, well, why would we sign a letter of support? This is really your local delegation's problem. You need to get your senator and assembly member. Well, we already knew that, but so it wasn't really deeply useful advice. But her point was that, here you got the author of the bill who was skeptical of signing on. So we would still like to get the housing advocates to sign on. So that's really what JEA, our Sacramento lobbyist, is going to be tasked with, is trying to get others outside of our local delegation.
Mayor Oglesby, I see you have your hand up. Do you have any questions on this?
I'm sorry, I just didn't know how to take it down, so.
Okay, no questions. Any other questions out there? No other questions? Okay, we'll close that one up, that
Great.
item up. Anything?
No, that's
else?
it. That's the agenda. Those are the timely, high-level issues that we wanted the cities to be aware of.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the PAC members for tuning in for the meeting. I appreciate it. And December 14th, we'll be discussing Cal-Am, 1,000 acre feet again. So please join the meeting. Meeting adjourned. If anybody else have anything. Okay, go ahead.
Chair Edwards, there is a member of the public who wants to speak also.
Okay. Tune them up.
Rudy Fisher, please present your comment.
Thank you, Arlene. My understanding, and it really wasn't brought up at this meeting, but my understanding is that the purpose of this water is for affordable housing projects in the several cities. And I know when this effort, when the effort started, and it was, I was at the MPWMD meeting, I think it was in January or February, when John Wizard of Seaside and Tyler Williamson of Monterey got up and stated that the only housing that should be built is affordable housing. Now, I think that was a political statement, and it shouldn't be turned into a policy. I was flabbergasted then, as I am now, that you're being asked to consider this action as a serious one. Even as the State Water Resources Control Board is reducing the amount of water the peninsula can draw from the Cumberland River by 1,000 acre feet this year and another 1,000 next year, you're being asked to tell them that you need 75 acre feet of water, but only for affordable housing. So under this logic, the hundreds of people who own property, pay property taxes on that property, and cannot afford and could afford to build if water were available will still not be allowed to do that. But cities and affordable housing agencies will be able to build subsidized low-cost housing. I sort of find that unbelievable and have to wonder if it may even be illegal. And the reason I say that is this agency is not supposed to be a land use agency. And this action would put the MPWMD in a position where it is the premier land use agency and is picking winners and losers in the struggle for housing on the Monterey Peninsula. The reason this agency was created was to ensure the development of water for all. That has not yet happened. We need that to happen so we can get off the CDO so that everybody can build. I think that you should reject this action outright. As many of you know, I'm very much in favor of affordable housing, but it should be part of an overall plan where people are built both affordable and market rate housing. Please reject this action. Thank you.
Fisher. Any other comments from the public, Arlene?
Chair Edwards, I see no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board members?
Through the chair, it's Director Oglesby.
Go ahead, Mayor Oglesby.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure about, you did say the district is going to send out that communique about the water issue, about we're okay, you know, for this upcoming year. And I was wondering if it's a way that you guys from the district can send it to the cities directly, so we can put it, you know, either put it on our agendas or make an official announcement. You know, I don't want that information to get lost in the ether just by generating a letter and it's out there on somebody's website. It should be an official announcement to the communities, to the councils. Thank you.
I would
Thank you,
ask for
Mayor
that for the
Oglesby.
county as well.
Yeah.
And the county. We will do that. I believe in transparency, and I believe this community should know what's going on with their water. That's why this issue is brought up to the PAC. And I appreciate all of you for tuning in. But we'll be talking about this some more at the December 14th meeting. Please tune in. Okay. If nothing else?
Chair, you just wanted to respond to the public comment.
Go ahead.
So I do want to clarify, at never any point did myself, I can't speak for any of the other electeds, stand up in a public setting or in a private setting for that matter and ever communicate that we should only develop affordable housing. Affordable housing should definitely be the priority because that's where the greatest need is. But I think that there's also a space for market rate housing. I think when we're looking at the problems regarding the affordability of housing, additional units on the market,
You're starting to
the
break
supply
up.
and demand issues in relation to housing. So I just wanted to clear. Oh, am I coming in okay now?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that, and if the general manager could clarify too, that we're not dictating what the cities and the municipalities can do with this water, right? But the hope is that we're doing this with them prioritizing affordable housing. So not to say that they can't do projects that have mixed affordable and market rate housing in them. And I'm just hoping that the general manager can clarify what the water management district's authority is over the cities and how that relationship would work.
Yeah, so kind of twofold. First, the issue of land use. We only volunteered to do this because we could help navigate the cease and desist order and could make the right connections with people to help understand the health and safety issues. And that's basically the way the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 defined the need for housing as a health and safety issue. So we, the district, don't care how the cities use their water. We're not a land use agency, but for this specific need, we were approached by housing advocates to say, how can we free up some water while we're waiting on a permanent supply to get built? And that's where we raised our hand and said, well, let's see if we can't lead this effort. It'll be the state itself saying, hey, this is only for housing. It's not us. Now, the issue I have is if it was only for 100% affordable, it probably wouldn't get utilized because there's just not enough profit motive or foundational money available. Foundations like, well, you know, it's either city money or foundation money that can do 100% affordable. So I've envisioned that if you have a project that's mixed use, so the 20% set aside, well, you're going to get market rate housing and affordable housing. That would be a viable use. If you've got a mixed use project like the work property on Alvarado that got rebuilt after the building burned down, well, that would include commercial. It's not even housing, but I still envision that that's an appropriate use. So the goal was to get water available for housing projects, which inevitably are going to be some form of mixed affordable and market rate, but there may be some 100% affordable that get done as well. I mean, but we're not going to lead that with our authority as the district.
I appreciate you clarifying, and I also am appreciative of the Water Management District Board and staff for taking this up upon our request and advocating for some action here. This is true regional partnership, and I really appreciate the efforts being made.
Thank you, council member. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you all.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.